Welcome to episode 50 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co-host.
It's Christian.
On this week's episode, me and Christian both watched the movie The Man Who Killed Hitler, then Bigfoot. Christian read the book Catch and Kill, and I finished the game Life is Strange Before the Storm. And then finally, we will play our Amazon review game. But first, Christian, this week we watched The Man Who Killed Hitler and then Bigfoot. And I'm very curious, did this live up to what you thought it would be?
Yeah, I gotta apologize. This was my pick, and it was not a good one.
When you use the name of a movie, The Man Who Killed Hitler and then Bigfoot, I'm thinking of a dumb B movie that's straight to video or something like that, and this is not what this movie was.
Yeah, I was expecting, with a title like that, I was expecting like Bubba Hotep style nonsense shenanigans where it's just kind of off the wall silly but still like fun. And it was like, what I was not expecting was like a deep dive into the psychology of an aging war hero. That was not conjured by the title of this movie.
Right. This movie sounds like it would be a fun movie to watch, and in fact, it's a little bit depressing to watch.
Oh, yeah.
So this movie is directed by Robert D. Krasowski, and I'm not able to find if he's actually directed any other movies.
I looked, and it does not appear that is the case. It looks like this is his only thing.
And, I mean, I guess he does an okay job. I couldn't find a budget or anything about this movie. It's on Hulu, so I'm guessing it was more or less a straight release to Hulu or whatever, something like that. I'm not sure. What is the basic premise of this movie?
I mean, which one? So it's told partially in flashbacks that Sam Elliott was sent as a young soldier on like a covert mission to kill Hitler, and he succeeded, but then Germany just replaced him with a lookalike Hitler and just continued the war like nothing had happened. And then now that he's old, the government was like, we have a Bigfoot problem. You know who we should send? The guy who killed Hitler, I guess. So they track him down and send him to Canada.
So I have so many problems with their choice of picking this guy to go kill Bigfoot, because nothing in the story other than them saying he has a blood type that is immune to this plague that Bigfoot is somehow causing. Other than that, there's nothing in the story that shows that he is a master tracker of wild game and hunting that way. When he was hunting Hitler, he's basically just undercover and then snuck up on Hitler and shot him. He didn't track Hitler through the woods.
This movie has so many holes. Like, I can't... The opening scene was nonsense. He looked at his watch and it was just a swastika ticking around. It didn't have hands. Like, Nazi watches, I guess, just don't tell time.
Right, and so this movie jumps back and forth a lot, which is actually one of the things I did like about it, because I think if they stayed on any one of the stories for too long, I would have been more bored than I was with any one of the stories. And I thought the flashbacks of him in Nazi Germany and him with his his girlfriend were the most interesting, because that was actually telling, I think, a pretty decent story. But man, there are some just tropes in this movie. Number one, I saw we both noted it. The bad guy is just doing a jerk move while robbing him just to give like the old guy a chance to beat them up. Like it makes no sense why they would burn a picture of his wife while they're robbing him.
Yeah, like, it's one thing for them to be like, we're gonna mug you, like muggings happen, but like, there's absolutely no motivation for them to be like, you know what else, we're gonna like rough you up for no reason, even though you're just like, yeah, sure, here's my keys, and then we're gonna like smack the hell out of you, and then we're gonna put out a cigarette on this picture of your love, and it's like, why? Just take the guy's car and go. Like, there's no reason for all of this.
Yeah, it's so hard to talk about this movie because really we are talking about two completely different movies.
Yeah.
I really think when they proposed this, they either had the idea for one of the movies or the other, and somehow they're like, we only have enough for an hour long. We need another half hour. So either the original premise was Sam Elliott hunting Bigfoot, or the original premise was this guy who had killed Hitler, or at least a World War II soldier, dealing with like his life in the 80s, and he has a lot of regrets and stuff like that. I don't know which one's first. I'm guessing the Bigfoot part, and then they're like, it's only 30 minutes. We need to put more, so let's give a backstory to this guy. Sorry.
I would love to find out that these were like two movie pitches that were done in some office back to back, and the guy in charge was just like, let's do them both at the same time.
Right. So, did you prefer the Bigfoot or the World War II story more?
And I guess I have to say the World War II story because Bigfoot was barely in it.
And Bigfoot looked weird in this.
Ooh, yeah. Real weird. Like, they mentioned Bigfoot at like the 45-minute mark for the first time.
Oh, I paused when it came in, and you're right. It's like literally halfway through the movie when they're like, we need someone to hunt Bigfoot.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I thought maybe like this was going to be, he's hunting Bigfoot as an old man throughout the movie. And he's hunting Hitler as a young man throughout the movie. And so the two stories are told concurrently. But instead it was just him moping around as an old man having these flashbacks, and then all of a sudden they were like, hey, go kill the Bigfoot. And he was like, you got it.
They do not fit together at all. It is literally 45 minutes, one movie, and then you find out that Bigfoot's in the world causing a plague and he needs to go save it. And that's like that's the next 30 minutes. And then the last 15 or 20 minutes goes back to like God. A mopey story about him still being alive.
This movie ended 14 times.
Right.
Like, it should have ended with him on top of the mountain. It should have ended with the funeral. It should have ended with them on the boat. It should have ended at the school play. It should have and it just kept going. It never stopped.
Bigfoot gets 2 death scenes. The Bigfoot fakes death for like 4 hours while he sets a fire around him.
It's true. Bigfoot gets 2 death scenes. That's wild. Yeah, Bigfoot looked like an alien. And also, I wanted to ask, does this movie posit a world where Bigfoot is an established fact? Because at no point, like the government guys came and they were like, the problem is Bigfoot, and he was just like, okay. And then he went and talked to his brother. He's like, they want me to hunt Bigfoot, and the brother was like, good luck, man. Like, nobody at any point was like, they want you to do what? With who?
Right, so I trying to pick up on context clues. I don't think Bigfoot's an established fact because early in the movie they reference hikers going missing in the woods from a serial killer. I think they're implying that at one point Sam Elliott has hunted the Bigfoot species or something like that, but they never explicitly say it, and that's why they come to him, and that's why I don't think it makes sense. I think he has like some sort of government knowledge privy to Bigfoot. That's my best guess.
This movie is crazy.
It's only like an hour and a half. They could have put in an extra sentence to explain why he knows Bigfoots exist.
I can't believe this movie was only an hour and a half. I honest to God thought I spent 4 hours in front of my computer.
Yeah, what's weird is we watched Troll Hunter last time. This had a similar premise where it's like, oh, a monster has like a disease, you have to go kill it.
Yeah, at first when I thought they were introducing I thought they were saying that Bigfoot had like rabies or something, and it was like a rage virus situation where he's just been living peaceably in the Canadian wilderness, and all of a sudden now he's just murdering wildlife and hikers. But then as it went on, I'm like, I guess he has the the Bigfoot flu.
Right, like the Bigfoot plague. It's going to jump to humans. Who knows?
Oh man.
And so that is just like half the story. The other half of the story follows Sam Elliott as a young man who has to go to war and leaves the love of his life behind, who I think dies off screen. It's never very explicitly said. And then he hunts Hitler, and once he finally gets back from his top secret investigation, he's super sad and basically lives the rest of his life until this point, wallowing in that sorrow, which completely different movie than the Hunting Bigfoot. The Hunting Bigfoot portion is what I thought this movie was going to be.
Yeah, this movie was so weird. Like, yeah, everybody in this town, he keeps, like, there's a lot of real intense haircut and shaving scenes that was an odd choice. And everybody's always like, you need to retire and go start golfing. And, like, he's obviously already retired. All he does is sit in that house. Like, let him have his crisis. Like, stop trying to tell him to, like, get out and do stuff. Oh, my God.
The opening scene with him at a bar is, like, it really reminded me of The Big Lebowski, just him sitting there drinking. I will say this movie tries to do some things. It tries to make a few points which I think are interesting. I don't think they do it particularly well, though. One of those is, though, that it's Sam Elliott basically questioning the value of human life and is it worth actually killing someone, because, you know, then they use the ultimate evil Hitler, where he seemed like he genuinely felt bad for taking a life, even though Hitler was horrible and he knew all the things that Hitler was doing. It still psychologically affected him. And then you hear the whole, he does a whole spiel about this is an alternate history where actually there are multiple Hitlers, and like Hitler was more or less just a prop. The idea was Nazism, and so Hitler just kept being replaced. So him killing someone, which tore his soul apart, was in the end like useless.
So I really like that. Honestly, like, that's not something I had ever heard before, where he was like, yeah, I succeeded, and they just replaced Hitler. And then Project Valkyrie succeeded, and then they just replaced him again. And I'm like, this is cool. I mean, it's like the Batman mythos almost, where it's like anybody can wear the cape, is like anybody can wear the mustache.
Yeah, I gotta say though, I think I thought it was pretty cool how they had him sneak in with like the gun and stuff like that. But his escape had to have been messy. Like, he spent all this time planning going in, and then he just shoots Hitler and panics and runs out. He does not leave in any sort of calm manner. I think that would raise some eyebrows. And it's weird because his persona we see as a young man does not scream, this is the ultimate hunter to go kill Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, who would be?
Right. But it's not this, like, I would not have picked him. Like, they're like, you've done so many things. My grandpa told me stories. But it's like, the only story we see is him sneaking in, killing Hitler, and then, like, freaking out.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, that's a trope I really like in a lot of things, is when it's like the new generation is like, oh, I've heard, like, myths about you, and like, your war stories are legendary and all this stuff. And so that happens. The guy comes in from the FBI and was like, my grandfather told me legends about this one soldier, and it's you. And were they legends or were they real? And then I'm sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, I'm here for this. I love this. And then I took a beat and I was like, what did he do though? He snuck into a room. He shot Hitler with a flask, and then he went home and was sad for 55 years. Like, if there's more to his story, I would have loved to have seen that movie.
Right, something that showed him hard, something or other. Because, I mean, do you remember they also had the weird scene in the beginning where the gypsy guy like shaved him, and then he's like, we're both cursed?
Real strange.
I'm guessing that's alluding to his girlfriend dying, but
I guess.
Like, otherwise, that movie's pretty, or that scene was pretty out of place. And then there's a whole side story about him reconciling with his brother, even though he's been home for like 30 years and just stopped talking to his brother for some reason.
Well, and isn't his brother the barber? Isn't that the one who he went? So, like, I guess he was still going in and getting haircuts, but then he was just like, we're not going to talk about anything meaningful. Just shave my face and leave me alone. This movie has so many holes. I can't even get my head around it.
Also, why did they think he died? Like, he just came back. They buried his stuff, and then he came back. He's like, "Oh yeah, I apparently recuperated in the woods, but no one told you that I survived."
Did he walk back from Canada?
Right?
I don't know where this movie's set, to be fair. Like, I did like the Ring of Fire situation. I thought that was cool. But they also took great pains to be like, Bigfoot has killed everything in this, or like the virus has killed everything in this radius, and we set a giant fire around it to stop the virus from spreading and to stop anything else from getting in. Then he's in there hunting, and he like runs into a moose, and I'm like, well, I guess not everything in here is dead.
I think the moose was infected.
Man, this movie's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot going on for it. The Ring of Fire, like, as soon as they talk, he's like, we're hunting Bigfoot. It goes from them explaining that he needs to kill Bigfoot to him being in the woods in like a minute and a half. There is very little lead up into it. He's just there.
Oh yeah, and not only is he just there, he's actively engaging Bigfoot. Like, they go from standing outside that ring to him being in a firefight, and I was like, we're hunting right now. Like, there's no lead up to him. Like, they do it after that scene where he's like following the footsteps and tracking, but there's no lead up. They're like, good luck, and then he's like, boom, there he is.
I literally turned to send a text, and it took me 20 seconds, and I looked back up. I thought I had completely missed a scene or something. It was that abrupt.
Let me ask you this. Do you think this movie was trying to be funny? In places?
No. In places, maybe, but overall, I don't think it was trying to be funny.
Like, I couldn't tell. There's like the scene where he goes in to kill Hitler and he does the Nazi salute, but he does like his fingers crossed behind his back.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't tell if that was like a fingers crossed for good luck or like a tongue-in-cheek joke about like, haha, I didn't just mean that Nazi salute I did that you didn't see because your back was turned. And like,
no, I think you're right. I think that was meant to be like a tongue-in-cheek joke. I forgot about that.
Like where he's on the radio and he's like, Bigfoot led me off a cliff, and also he's not living up to his name because he doesn't have big feet. I'm like, is this supposed to be funny? Because if it is, they're not doing it right.
Yeah, the only other funny parts I can think of are when there was the flashback with him and his girlfriend when he was trying to propose to her, and like the old snooty like rich parents came up and talked to him. But yeah, overall I think this was trying to be a serious movie, and then they ham-fisted Bigfoot in it for some reason.
I can't imagine pitching this being like, I want a serious drama about the psychology of a man returning from war and finding his life has been uprooted, and then at the end we're gonna make him fight a mythical creature.
My big thing on this is give this a different title, because when you use a name like The Man Who Killed Bigfoot or The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot, I'm envisioning something along the lines of a Sharknado, a Freddy vs. Jason, an Alien vs. Predator, something just weird. And this is not what I was anticipating. And even the description is misleading on Hulu.
Like, I was not super on board for this, obviously, as I've made fairly clear, but it fully lost me when he got into the knife fight with Bigfoot.
Right.
And Bigfoot started, like, he stabbed him and Bigfoot just started throwing up onto his face.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I think that was also meant to be funny.
I like when they kept adding when they kept adding endings after ending after ending at the end of this. I was desperately hoping that it like the secret ending was gonna be after Bigfoot like threw up into his mouth. Sam Elliott is now like the doomsday carrier, and so like him coming home is dooming humanity.
Right, something, because I will just say this movie. The Bigfoot scenes in this tonally make no sense to the rest of the movie, and the entirety of like the Bigfoot part of this is tops 30 minutes. It might be closer to like 20, 25.
It's nonsense.
Do you know what this Rotten Tomatoes is on this one?
The critics gave it a 76. The audience gave it a 51. That's so high.
That is really high on both of those, and I cannot actually believe it. It's that
Yeah,
high.
I'm stunned when I saw this.
I'm trying to think of like other things that were in the 76 range. Like, was Shazam in that area? Like,
I'm racking my brain trying to figure out what the critics saw in this movie to give it a 76.
Let me actually let's do a break here because I kind of want to bring it up. I think only like a couple people like rated it.
That would at least make a little sense. Because, like, genuinely, when I saw that in the notes, my jaw dropped.
Wow, so I'm surprised. There were 90 critics who rated this for Rotten Tomatoes and 757 users. So it's a little more popular. I would put this 30s or something, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say high 20s.
Yeah, like I didn't absolutely hate it. It was fine ish. I would not rewatch it. I don't know if you would.
No, no.
What was the one that we watched that was like the British dark comedy where they turned into animals?
The Lobster.
The Lobster. I would probably prefer to watch this over The Lobster, but that's not saying much.
I'm with you on that one. That movie was banana boots. Not that this one wasn't, but
yeah. I do think it has somewhat redeeming qualities when they're doing the World War II stuff, but otherwise it's really slow.
Yeah, like I usually really like Sam Elliott. I was sad about this.
This week, Christian read the book Catch and Kill, and what did you think of this?
This book was riveting. Like I could not put it down. I read it almost in one go.
So this is authored by Ronan Farrow. Who is that?
He is an investigative reporter. Previously worked for the New York. He had previously worked for NBC, which is a major part of this book as to why he no longer works for NBC. He now works for the New Yorker doing investigative journalism. He's the one who one of the people who broke the story on the Weinstein sexual assault allegations, and that's largely what this book is about.
So did he break that and then start writing this book, or was this book all tied together?
No, he broke that and then began writing this book as a way of telling the story about what was going on behind the scenes during the reporting.
So what is this book about?
So the subtitle is Lies, Spies, and the Conspiracy to Protect Predators, and that more or less sums it up. It's split into several parts, but the vast majority of it is centered around the Weinstein Scandal. It does dip semi-briefly into the Matt Lauer scandal, but really only because of its relevance to NBC, which is where he was working. The three parts of this really are him reporting on Weinstein, Weinstein pushing back and hiring all these people and agencies to like actively work against him, and then the third part is NBC's failure, like journalistic failure to get the story out there.
So I am not well versed in the Weinstein scandal. Obviously, I've heard about the Me Too movement and the broad strokes of it. Do you want to give a quick recap on what exactly is happening with that for the part one?
So yeah, basically, Harvey Weinstein was or I guess still technically is, a like major producer in Hollywood, and he would trade like sexual favors for opportunities to appear in his movies. And so it was like he would summon these like new young actresses to hotel rooms under the pretense that they were going to be meetings, and then he would like coerce them or like outright assault them, and then afterward be like, if you tell anybody, I'll ruin your career. And that went on for decades.
Wow. And so then obviously this started coming out and it was broken and this book started going. And what pains did Weinstein take to cover that up by attacking this specific author?
So yeah, this is the part that I think shook me to my core, like the most, is the the resources that rich people have at their disposal is incredible. Like they truly live in another dimension. Like Weinstein was hiring an Israeli mercenary like spy group called Black Cube, and they were just planting people like all over this story. Like they had spies who would become friends with the sources of the story and try to get information out of them. They had people posing as other journalists, calling Ronan Farrow, like asking to collaborate so that they could figure out what information he had or didn't have and who he was talking to and when and what they were saying. And they were tapping phones and they were hiring other news organizations. Well, I mean news. It's like the National Enquirer to like follow up and throw legal threats all over the place. Like it is incredible the amount of resources that he had at his disposal.
And then you said the final part related to NBC, and they are actually, it sounds like they're recently in the news because of this. Do you want to break down their failures?
Yeah, so essentially what had happened, as it's laid out in the book, is Weinstein apparently knew or had suspicion that NBC had a Matt Lauer problem, and so he leaned on them and kind of said, if you let him publish this story, I'm going to like tear your company down because I know what's going on over there. Because it wasn't just Matt Lauer, it was all these executives at NBC that have been having the same kind of sexual assault allegations leveled against them, and the women have just been kind of paid off. They have to sign non-disclosure agreements so that they can't talk about it, and then they're given what NBC called an enhanced severance, where they're just given so much money, it's ridiculous. And in return, then, NBC went to Ronan and basically told him, you're not allowed to report on this, we're not going to publish it, or we're not going to put it to air. And so eventually somebody there said, this is a story, but you can't do it here. And so he was like, cool, I'll do it at the New Yorker instead. And so he took the story out the door and they published it like 2 weeks later, I think. But what NBC has been saying essentially since this scandal started was that they deemed that it wasn't up to snuff. Like the story wasn't solid enough, they didn't have the right sources, they didn't have good enough interviews. And that's obviously not the case since he took it out the door and they published it like a week and a half later.
That's like that's depressing on NBC's part, where they have so much discord at their higher levels, and it makes you wonder how many companies are run like this, where they can be blackmailed so easily because their higher ups are so scared about that coming out, and no one can really fire them for it.
Yeah, like it's really, there's a lot of chaos going on in this book and in several different agencies in the Weinstein Company and NBC at Black Cube, that militant organization, and then at the legal threats that the New Yorker had to deal with. And it was wild. It reads like a noir spy novel, which it kind of is, even though it's fully just a true story.
And do you know what happened to Weinstein? I know he had gone to court. I don't know if anything ever actually came of that, and I know he was in the news somewhat recently.
Yeah, I mean, he's out in the world right now just bopping around. He has a court date, I think, for the beginning of next year, so it's like it's ongoing. But like he just on Friday, I think, just a couple days ago, showed up at like an event for aspiring actors, and like people lost their minds. Because he was just chilling at a table watching these comedians do their sets like it was a normal day.
I know people called him out on that too. I don't know like what's going through his mind that he thinks that is the smart thing to do, is to show up there.
I mean, I don't know that he really thinks that anything's wrong. Like he's lived a life where he's done this for, like I said, this has gone on for decades, and he's lived a life essentially completely devoid of any consequences. The other thing that broke literally just this weekend was, I think this was also Friday. NBC, in the face of all this bad press from like really just this book in particular, has released everyone from their enhanced severance NDAs. And so anybody who got one of those non-disclosure agreements on their way out the door at NBC is now free to talk as much as they want. So I would look for this story to continue developing in pretty short order.
Would you recommend this book?
Oh, absolutely. This is a strong recommendation. Like, I wasn't planning on putting much energy into this story just because it's, you know, it's a bummer, but it's an important story. And his producer, Ronan's producer at NBC, was like equally upset about this whole situation, but he didn't follow him to the New Yorker. He stayed at NBC. Rick McHugh, and he published an article in Vanity Fair like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was a quick read. It's not a full novel, obviously, but like it was just enough that I was like, oh man, there's a lot more to this story than I knew about, and it sounds pretty interesting. And so I scooped this up, and I was glad I did. It was riveting.
I don't want to get too off topic, but I'm interested to see. I imagine in a couple years, something like that, there's going to be a book out there about Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on all at once. Like they touch on all this stuff kind of real briefly just to like acknowledge its presence, but like a month or two after the Weinstein story broke, Ronan broke another story about Les Moonves, who was the CEO, I believe, of CBS. And he was involved in all of this like similar kind of stuff, like not maybe on the same level as Weinstein, but like he had a lot of accusations. And so like Ronan's all wrapped up in this now. He's got several stories breaking all about this same stuff, but so this book isn't even the full story. And like there's stuff in this where he still has a couple sources that leaked him stuff about the spy organizations, and they're still anonymous. Like he, in the one chapter, he just says like, that's all I can tell you about this person because that's all I know. Maybe one day I'll meet them, but not now.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like I would fully recommend it. I got it on Kindle and I read it in like a day and a half.
Man, how many is it? I'm guessing it's a pretty quick read then.
Yeah, I mean he's a good writer, so once you get sucked in, it's hard to put it down. All right then, and then this week you, Eric, wrapped up the game Lobster. So how did this one measure up?
I really liked Before the Storm. So this game was developed by Deck 9, who did not actually handle the first Life is Strange. They have a weird history of games. They did, I think most notably, Cool Borders 3 and 4 back in
nice.
The late 90s, which I love that game. They also did Neopets Dark Fairies. and
right.
Their Ratchet and Clank collection. So really eclectic work there, but they did a really good job with this one.
I love that kind of stuff. Like I know we've talked in the past about like James Wan's strange movie choices as a director. I really like when a company or a person is like, yeah, you know, let's just do this. Who cares?
Right, they are just doing. It seems like they're getting games to keep the lights on.
I get that. So what is this? What is Life is Strange 2 about? Like, well, I don't really know anything about either of these games, to be honest.
So Life is Strange is weird. So I believe I had talked about the first Life is Strange earlier in one of the earlier episodes because I just played it when we had finished it, and that story follows. That game follows the story of a girl named Max who ends up getting these time manipulation powers. So it's like an adventure game where you ask people questions and you're trying to figure out what happened to this missing girl, Rachel Amber, and you can use your time powers to help you figure that out. Life is Strange Before the Storm is a prequel to Life is Strange, and you actually follow the story of Rachel Amber, the girl who went missing and then was eventually found dead, and Chloe, who was a main character in Life is Strange, and her and Rachel Amber were friends, and that's how you got introduced into the mystery of trying to find this girl, because Max and Chloe were friends. So in this game, you play as Chloe, and it's set approximately 2 years before Life is Strange. This game is episodic, so there's 3 episodes or chapters, and I think they picked a good number. It's about 12 hours, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And like I said, in the last game, you had time manipulation powers. You don't have those as Chloe. Instead, they try and introduce a rebellious, like, yelling mechanic for your conversations where you need to pick the right things to win arguments, but it's definitely not nearly as fun. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. And where the first Life is Strange is really, you're trying to solve a mystery, and it gets really, really dark. This one is more of an angsty teenager simulator. You're playing these two 16-year-old. You're playing a 16-year-old who's friends with another 16-year-old. She's dealing with the fact that her dad had died a couple years earlier, and even though it's angsty, they still do manage to pack in a couple emotional punches, which I was not really expecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard when you have a situation where, like, one of the characters is going to end up dead.
Right, and that's what is weird about it, because in the first game, you hear about Rachel Amber, but you don't actually know anything about her. You see, the only thing you see is a missing poster of her. Otherwise, you have no concept of what she's like. So in this, you actually get to meet the character, and it's pretty cool, because you're learning something entirely new. And I can imagine that if you had played this game out of order and you had played Before the Storm first, then Life is Strange, you'd be like shocked to find out that she dies or she's missing at the very least in the first game.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right, and so this game's a little bit slow. It's just because you're walking around and you're talking to people, but I do really enjoy those games, and part of it is trying to you're trying to have emotional connections with those characters, and I do think they do a pretty good job of that.
Well, that's good, at least.
What
is was there anything in this game that was, like, frustrating?
A little bit. One thing that I didn't like about it was it seemed like they had retconned the story of the first one a little bit, where you could take, this is like a choose your own adventure game kind of thing. So you could take a path where Rachel and Chloe had like a relationship, like they would date. And in the first game, there's no mention that they were, dating at one point. They're just very close friends. So I understand it's choose your own adventure and it can be whatever, but I think the canonical way you play it is you're actually just very good friends. So I think it's a little bit confusing that way. I think what happened was this game ended up resonating pretty well with the LGBTQ community, so that I think they wanted to honor them by putting that in there, which I don't have a problem with. I was thrown off because it made me sit there, and because I haven't played the first game for over a year, so I was like Googling, was there more to this relationship than I thought, because I was like, I had completely missed it. But in the first game, like, it's hinted that Rachel Amber had a relationship with Chloe's drug dealer, who's actually a prominent character in this game. So I wasn't wrong. It just had thrown me off when it was posed like that.
Yeah, these games sound fun, but they definitely sound dark in places.
Oh, man, this one is so weird, because I really think the game is trying to force you to make a decision in the end that does not make sense in the real world. So I'm going to spoil this here. But the end of the game, I think, is pretty emotional. You as Chloe are going... So a lot of the game is Rachel Amber's trying to... She thinks her dad's cheating on her first, or cheating on her mom first. Then she finds out that he wasn't cheating on her. He was meeting with her real mother, and he doesn't want her to meet her real mother. And then you find out this conspiracy that he had actually hired one of the big drug dealers in town to kidnap and murder her mother so she wouldn't be involved in his daughter's life. And so at the end of the game, you get in there and confront this guy about it, and some things happen, and the mother ends up getting saved one way or another. And so you start talking to Rachel's real mother, and she's like, "Don't tell Rachel that he tried to kill me. He was just doing it for his best. He really loves her. Because why he didn't want her to be around his daughter was she had been a drug addict and all these things, and was a horrible human being for so many years. But she had cleaned up and had rehab and stuff. But he was a district attorney who also tried to have her murdered. So the saying about glass houses and throwing stones." And so the big choice at the end of the game is, do you tell Rachel that her dad tried to have her real mother killed, or you don't? And the game consistently is like, don't tell Rachel, keep the lie, like, let her be happy, blah, blah, blah. And it's one of those things where, like, if this was the real world, this man committed a crime. Like, you would definitely tell someone. He tried to have someone murdered.
Yeah, really, like, that's that's not something that you're just like, no, water under the bridge.
I mean, I guess the mom forgave him, but I don't know. Like, he has the public trust in him at the very least. I don't think he should be the DA. He derailed an investigation to have this done.
Oh man, that's wild.
Yeah, so overall, it's good. There's a really cool scene in the first episode where it's optional, but if you go and talk to these one characters, you do like a mini D&D campaign where you're choosing what happens and stuff. Cool. Overall, I would really recommend this game. I don't think it's as good as the first one, so if you can only play one, I would say play the first game. I think the first game's awesome. I feel like I might have spoiled it a little bit to people, so I feel bad for that, but even so, like, the endings on it are... The ending of it is great. It's such a good story. The ending of this one is chilling because you know what has happened to Rachel Amber, and the last scene is just Chloe trying to call her, which is taking part at the very beginning of the first game, and she's just... you just see what's called the dark room in the first game, which is where the person had taken her and taken pictures and murdered her and stuff. So it's just like, oh no, like, this was kind of... more or less like a happy game at points, and then it just gets like dark right at the end.
I don't remember if you said what is this on? Is this on PS4?
I think you can play this on just about anything. It's on PS4, it's on Xbox One, it's on PC. I think it might even be on iPad. Yeah, it's on Android, iOS, Linux, Mac OS, Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One.
Yeah, they're not screwing around.
Yeah, it's a Square Enix game, so I think they put it on everything to try and get it out there. And now it's time for our Amazon review game. Just a quick recap. Christian has picked a movie from Amazon and is going to read a 5-star review for it. I will get 2 yes or no questions to help me narrow down the movie, and then I can ask Christian to read another review. I will get 2 more questions, and then Christian will read 1 final review, and I will get 2 final questions, and then I will be forced to guess. And if I get it on the first try, I'll get 3 points, 2 points for second guess, 1 point for third review, and we are keeping score this year, and we'll tally those up in January. I am ready when you are, Christian.
All right, I took a real shot in the dark on this one. I'm hoping it pays off. I watched this a quarter of a century ago. It was totally ahead of its time. Wow. I hadn't watched it since, and I have to say this film is superb. Brilliant, with incredible attention to detail. Also, the creepy goat head with the horns at the end and placed on the sacrificial altar was oddly forced and out of place in the narrative. It really gave me the heebie-jeebies. The fact that the film creators decided to include wings on the statue and to mimic the Western satanic effigy in the likeness of an Egyptian sculpture was disturbing and deceptive. The story is compelling, complex, and the language, dialects, and dialogue is exquisitely delightful to listen to. A lot of time and dedication was put into the telling of this tale. What a marvelous rediscovery.
Is this a found footage movie?
No.
Oh boy, I was thinking Blair Witch. Was this movie released in the 90s? You said quarter of a century ago, but I don't know when this review was from, so now I'm like trying to narrow down.
Yes, it was in the 90s.
I'm going to need another review.
Okay. Favorite movie of all time. If you love multiverse travel, exploration, and discovery of other species and cultures with unexpected universal twists, this is a must-see. I've seen it a million times. The entire saga is underrated, and I have no idea why. It's amazing.
Man, you're giving me a lot here. It's obviously a series of some sort. Is Bruce Willis in this?
No.
I don't even know what to ask to narrow this down. Is this a action movie?
I would say not primarily.
Okay, I'm going to need a third review.
All right. Kurt Russell, you bring it every time. Great movie, had some issues with connection, and it was a bit fuzzy in places, but nothing I could attribute to the movie itself. It's to my shame that I admit it took nearly 30 years for me to see this movie. I have memories of the TV shows based on this film, but it was my first go at the film, and I was not disappointed. I think it's pretty amazing that I can still watch a movie from 25 years ago and think it was pretty great. Was fun to see some pretty famous actors in B-roles like Kurt Russell and James Spader. Gotta start somewhere.
Oh my gosh, I'm not going to get this, Christian. I don't know too many Kurt Russell movies. Is Snake Plissken in this?
No.
The only other movie I can think of that Kurt Russell was in is maybe the 90s is the one where he gave the woman amnesia on a boat and convinced her he was his husband.
Ooh, don't know that one.
Yeah, I don't even know the name. It's like Overboard or something.
Oh, yeah, I do know that one.
I'm going to seed on this because I have no idea what this movie is.
I guess my shot in the dark didn't pan out then. It was Stargate.
Oh, never saw it.
Oh, that's too bad. The reviews are right. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard of it, and it's like that and Battlestar Galactica are two real blind spots for me.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the Stargate TV shows, but I used to love this movie as a kid. I was scrolling through Amazon the other day looking for something, and this one popped up, and I was like, "Oh man, yeah, this will be good."
That seems like one it's like one of those where you're like, I bet Eric has seen this because it seems like it's in my wheelhouse. But yeah, blind spot. All right, thanks for listening, guys. Before we head out, Christian, what are you going to be checking out this week?
I'm still working my way through some of those games that I bought that I absolutely didn't have time to play, but we'll get there. I want to get caught up on the new Disenchanted episodes. I also want to watch the first 8 episodes of the new season of BoJack came out this weekend, and I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. They split this last season into 2 parts, so half of it now and half of it I think on New Year's Day, and then that's it. That's the end of the series. So I'm sad to see it go, but those are probably my priorities for the week.
I am currently watching The Watchmen on HBO, which is one of the very few times I'm actually trying to watch television while it's airing, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's not too bad so far. I'm interested to see in what direction they go. I will hold my ultimate judgment till the end. I am almost done with Until Dawn, which is a game I really like, and I'll probably talk about next week. I have like 2 chapters left or whatever. It's a great horror game. It's a great October game. And then I want to give out a shout out to a game I picked up last weekend that I am loving. It's called Greedfall, and it is basically a take on older BioWare RPGs like Mass Effect or the Dragon Age games. It's closer to the Dragon Age games. It's set in like a fantasy setting, but it's more like a colonial fantasy setting, so people have guns and magic, and you're basically Britain going into either like America or Ireland or whatever, dealing with natives. But it has all of the old style like interactions where you're talking to people, and it's not just about action, it's more about interacting with characters, and there are these intricate multi-tier quests, the different ways you can complete them, and it is so much fun so far.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it is $50 right now, so I don't know if it's necessarily worth it if you don't like those types of games, but if it's ever on sale, I think it's definitely a hidden gem.
The new Terminator also comes out this week. I don't know if there's any interest there. This is, I think, the 6th one.
Yeah, I kind of fell off the Terminator after Terminator 2, and then I watched one of the ones in the mid 2000s, and then I was just like, I'm done.
I was at dinner with my parents the other day, and my mom was like, "This is the third one, right?" And I was like, "Oh no!" And as we were talking about it, I realized that I have inexplicably seen all of them.
Wow, that's dedication.
I mean, it's mostly just a testament to working at the movie theater. Like, there's no way I would have gone to see Terminator 4 or Terminator Genesis if it hadn't been absolutely free.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess I'll watch this one just because I'm in it now. I've seen 5 out of the 6.
Right, man. You're locked in now. You're too far to give up. It's weird that it's just bringing back the main characters from the first movie at this point, right?
I don't know what this is gonna be now. Like, they've done, I mean, time travel is always a mess, but like they've done parallel universes I think twice now, and I think this is gonna be another one, because it looks like Linda Hamilton is now going to be protecting a different woman from the past who's getting targeted by the Terminator. Like, it looks real strange. The last one with Emilia Clarke, where they were in like a full alternate dimension, that one was not good.
I can't believe they're still making movies in that franchise. Like,
yeah.
Has the franchise really been beloved since 2?
No, and none of them have been good. Like, 3 was awful, 4 was not very good, 5 was awful. I can't imagine 6 is going to be anything but awful. Like, you're right. Like, it's one of the few movies that I can jump to when people say things like, the sequel is never better. Like, T2, I think, is significantly better than the first one.
Oh, definitely.
But then after that, it's trash. I truly don't know why they're still trying.
Alright guys, thanks for checking out our episode. If you would like to reach us, we are at gambots.blog@gmail.com, or we're on Twitter at gambotsnetwork. If you have a suggestion for the Amazon review game, we will probably use it. Otherwise, if you're listening somewhere where you can rate our podcast, we'd appreciate if you would give us a rating. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.